Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our November 3rd edition of our PBIS Leaders Network. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're able to tune in with us this morning. We are going to be talking today about classroom practices. We have a presentation from a local school district about classroom practices. And then we're going to be also in our second hour for folks that want to stay on. We're going to start our Tier 2 network today for those people who want a little bit more discussion, networking around Tier 2 practices for PBIS. So welcome. Our session is being recorded, just to remind you once again. There is the link to our bit.ly. I know Stacy's been doing a nice job of putting it in the chat box, but here it is also if you would like to follow along. You will probably want to get into those slides because we have a lot of live links for you today. And it's really easy then to go back and click on those live links so you don't have to take a whole ton of notes or anything. They're all there for you. So I'll give you a minute. And again, Stacy's continually putting that in the chat box so that you can get our slides for today if you'd like to follow along. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Mike. He's going to, of course, he is the king of our opening activities, and he is going to do kind of a fun activity this morning. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Heidi. Good morning, everybody. Yes, this is Mike, the Icebreaker Cash Check, coming to you through Zoom as we start our PBIS Leaders Network. Today is just a little icebreaker using the Mentimeter. And the question is, what are the pieces? We're going to create a word cloud where you list words or phrases. I think you're allowed two. Words or phrases you believe are essential or ideal characteristics, conditions, or actions needed for a positive classroom climate, because we all know that the classroom is one of the most important areas when it comes to PBIS. And as you'll see with our agenda today, we'll be focusing on classroom practices. There's 3 ways to vote. You can scan the code. You can go to that little www.menti.com or menti.com code and enter 1931070, or you could just click on vote in the materials. So at this time, we're going to see what shapes up. So Heidi, you can look at the click on that link that I told you about earlier today. It should populate as we enter our thing, enter our thoughts.
So the question is, what are the pieces needed to put in place for a positive classroom climate? And people are starting to populate already. Consistency and routines are critical. I know we still have people kind of still logging in as well. I'm not sure if we'd want to put that information in the chat boxes for the Mentimeter. That might make it easier for folks.
Sure thing.
The code, because it looks like we have. It looks like, and Mike, you are the purveyor of this, but it looks like we have one person kind of in there, and it maybe because people aren't getting onto the.
Okay, I'm looking to it right now. See, maybe if you hit refresh.
Oh, maybe it's, yeah, maybe I'll refresh. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Mike. Okay, now the word cloud is starting to build. So we'll give you another minute, and then I'll let Mike kind of wrap up what we've found in our word cloud. So go ahead and put your answers in the Mentimeter. What are the pieces needed to put in place for a positive classroom climate? And I know I'm kind of monitoring the participant box. People are still logging in as we speak. I'll hit refresh again. There we go. So let's give it another 30 seconds and I'll do a last refresh, Mike, and then I'll let you bring us home. All right, so we will refresh one last time.
All right, well, we see some common threads here with all of our thought processes, and we do know that respect is important, and that's often one of the overarching expectations for many of the districts that we work with that are implementing PBIS. We have clear expectations. All of us know it starts in the classroom. And if you have clear expectations, not only should they be clear, but they should be taught, and routines. That's all part of the process. Supervision, that's part of the key elements of the 8 classroom practices that are used in PBIS. And I see that we have a lot of people that know what is needed to have a positive classroom climate. But the challenge for all of us as leaders is to have that occur with fidelity in the classrooms and building wide. So thanks for participating. Once again, this is Mike, the Icebreaker Cash Check. I appreciate your participation today, and I'm looking forward to the presentation that we're going to experience today, where we dive a little bit deeper into what's happening in one of our school districts with positive classroom climate.
Thanks, Mike. I really think Mike should have his own radio show or something on Sirius. It would be a lot of fun. So we are going to talk about the things that that you've listed in the Mentimeter this morning regarding those effective practices for the classroom. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to have some updates to start. We're going to remind you again about that high school think tank, which has become really popular. We have a local presentation from Akron Public Schools, Voris Community Learning Center. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the tools that either your teams or your staffs can use to really make sure that the classroom practices are getting into the classroom really where they need to be. So that is our agenda for today. So we'll start with updates. The registration finally is open for the 2022 PBIS OLAC Showcase. Registration is free. Attending the conference is free. It will again be virtual this year. So all you have to do is go on there and register, and it will be in December, and you'll see a lot of great PBIS presentations. There's usually a keynote. There's a lot of great team presentations. It's really a great time to watch what people around the state are doing for PBIS. So that registration is open, and I would suggest that if that you register early. Some of you who are on this call are award winners this year. You should have received congratulatory emails with digital banners. We have received also the physical, well, you guys can also purchase physical banners for your schools if you want to, but we've received your certificates. And I'm not sure if everybody received the email, but there was some kind of a typographical error. So it's going to take us a little while to kind of filter through that stuff, but we will make sure you have your certificates, your framed certificates that you can put on your wall for our winners. It's just going to take us a minute to get through that because they sent them to me in a big box. And then I received an email that said, oh my gosh, the certificates had a typo. So we have to go in and kind of replace those. So that's going to take a minute. So we will get those to you, but you should have received your physical banner and congratulatory email. If you have not, please send me an email or contact me some way, and I'll make sure that you get what you get your banner or your congratulatory email if you haven't received it yet. So congratulations to all our folks who did a fabulous job last year as far as earning recognition. And so it is going to be December 6th. On that previous slide, you can just click on and you'll get the information for registration. And again, virtual this year. I think they feel that they can reach more people that way. We also wanted to remind you about the high school think tank. You don't need to register. If you see that link on your screen, that is the same link that they use every time. All you need to do is drop in and attend. It's an hour. And for us, it starts at 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, which is our time zone. Because it is all over the country, there are, everybody's logging in from different time zones. But the next one is going to be 11:18. People have told me they love this think tank, that it's really great for high school implementers. You can get together with people who are doing the same kind of work, and basically you just kind of show up and you talk to other people doing the work. So the next one will be on 11:18. We highly recommend that if you are implementing at the secondary level that you join in. Everybody has had fabulous positive response to the high school think tank that comes out of the Association of Positive Behavior Support. And those of you who know Stephanie Martinez from doing restorative practices, she helps facilitate the session. So it's really quite good. All right, so that was really, that's it for the updates. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to have Nick Lewis introduce himself and let you guys know where he's from. And he's going to talk today about how they're getting that PBIS practice in their classroom. So give me a minute to stop sharing. And Nick, you can go ahead and start screen sharing, and I'm going to throw it over to you.
All right. Is it Sharon? Heidi, we good?
You're good, and I can hear you.
Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Lewis. I am the school counselor at Boris CLC, which is a K-5 building at Akron Public Schools. Boris is in its 4th year of PBIS implementation. And our journey began here at Boris about 4 years ago, 2018-19 school year. We did training with Heidi and Stephanie, and we were able to roll out our program the following fall, expecting tons of questions, some pushback from our staff, and a lot of learning on the fly. And all of this happened. And as you can see, when I present, I like to use lots of pictures to tell a story rather than words, because I like to try and act more excited about my words when I talk. Anyway, so we definitely started seeing improvements when we started going, and especially in our common areas where we were seeing, we were using paper tickets as our acknowledgement system, but our classroom behaviors were still kind of a struggle as teachers hadn't really figured out a way to use our system to reward their students in the classroom. So then, as we all know, the pandemic hit and we were sent home, and our year just kind of felt incomplete. We didn't know what to build on because we never got to see the year through. And the following year, we started off virtual, and the APS, we actually stayed virtual until March of 2021. So it was a while there, but being virtual, our team picked up right where we left off, knowing that our building-wide expectations were solid, our common areas were improving, we were on the right track. But how do we get teachers to believe that PBIS should really be used in the classroom? How do we take that next step to get in there without pushing too hard? And then our first advantage happened. When we were able to have all of our teachers use Class Dojo instead of paper tickets as a reward system or acknowledgement system while we were doing virtual learning with our students. The buy-in on Dojo was 100%. Every teacher was on it, every parent was on it, every kid was able to check on it and track how they were doing, and they were engaged and they liked seeing how they could do. And it made a huge difference when using our school store that was virtual and using paper tickets from the previous year. It was a major improvement. Some teachers saw great success, while others were still struggling to figure out how to keep their students motivated when they're on the other side of a screen instead of right in the middle of their classroom. But then, and this is where I really get to what I'm here to talk about, we had our second big break of our PBIS program in a virtual staff meeting. We shared success stories from online experiences. And the biggest one came from actually one of our PBIS team members who said, I make all of my Class Dojo rewards based off of any expectation I have for my students. For example, camera on, microphone off, raise your hand to speak, participate in class, ask questions, etc. It looks something like this. And holy cow, if we didn't start reworking everyone's Class Dojo skills at that point to reflect desired behaviors and removed any negative points, which Heidi and Stephanie had always told us to do, and we had a hard time kind of getting our teachers to buy into. But once that happened, our kids weren't feeling deterred from participating or returning to virtual class because they could just walk away when they wanted to. And the language from our teachers became more consistent in line with their Class Dojo, reminding and reteaching that whole principle and practice changed almost overnight. So when we came back in person in March, it continued almost just as it was online. They were still using language and expectations and their acknowledgement system on Dojo to reflect what their expectations were. So going into the summer, I shared with my principal that I thought we could maybe get a set of personalized classroom expectations in each class based off the success we saw from using expectations on Class Dojo. So this is our school-wide common areas expectations matrix. We wanted our students to see the same layout and idea that we use here, but make it look different and personalized for the new area of the classroom. So at our first staff meeting before school began that summer of 2021, I was given about 90 minutes in that meeting to explain this whole process to our teachers and explain that they've already been doing this. You did this all last year with your class dojo, but now let's make it stand out. Let's really make it something that's there and have all these things that say, these are my expectations and these are the acknowledgements. And that's how we're going to make things procedure and not personal, as Heidi always likes to remind us. So I used, and I'm actually going to back out of presentation mode to really show you how this works. I used Google Slides here since our staff was really familiar with how that worked, and we set them up that way. So the way it's a really simple matrix maker. I'm not the most technical. I'm not like this huge tech guy or anything like that. It's really simple. I made it to reflect the way our matrix looked, right? I still have the eagle up there to make it look like it's our building. I still have be safe, be responsible, be respectful, just like we do on our school-wide matrix. But from here, I let the teachers fill it out how they want to. So I'm going to back out a little bit here. Oh, that's in. So it's a little smaller here, guys, but if you look, I start with example places here. That's over here on my left-hand side here, right? You're going to put your places or parts of the day where you're expecting them to follow these expectations. So I have entering class up here, and they can just seriously drag and drop because I want to make it as easy as they can. And they customize it too if they want. But entering class, exiting class, arrival, departure. I gotta zoom in to read the rest. Carpet time, desk work, whole group, free time, lining up, centers, enter, exit. And I've had tons of teachers do it differently, okay? And then so once they filled that in, they came over to examples of, let's go to safe, it's over here. And they would go over to examples of safe. How do I move this thing? There we go. And so you could put use walking feet, sit crisscross applesauce. Remember, I'm K-5, I'm not high school or middle school. So my kindergartners, first graders need a little more reminder for stuff like that. Push in chairs, use materials appropriately, et cetera, right? I'm going to go to responsible. I can drag that to each area to really describe to them what I need them to do. So when they go to carpet time, when they do enter exit, they know that when I'm respectful or responsible, when I'm respectful, I need to be on level 0 voice because we're entering the hallway. It really lays out those procedures so that we are consistently procedure, not personal. And then they go on their handy dandy phone and they get on Dojo and boom, we're giving points that acknowledge they're being respectful for doing that practice. And that language just continued. So each teacher worked on filling those out. Most caught on pretty quick. There were tons of questions and help needed, of course, because a matrix maker for pardon me, for some of us who went through Heidi's training are a little easier than some of us who did not, like a lot of our teachers. So, but I spent probably a good week and a half meeting with teachers one-on-one to customize them, make it real nice, make it so it's their language, make them comfortable. And it felt like it was their style and not something being forced to them. So we'll take a look here. Every teacher who works in our building, every person who works with a child made a matrix. Specials teachers, tutors, intervention specialists, counselors, we made one. Here's an example from our music teacher. Again, he entering class, instrument playing, singing, movement activities. Everything that you need to do in your class, in his class for that, is listed on there. Like I said, even the school counselor myself made a expectation sheet or a matrix. So I find this really helps with my job when they come in. As a counselor, I'm able to review the expectations of what I want them to do while they're with me, right? If I'm doing one-on-one talk, I can jump to responsible and say, hey, I need you to really focus on taking ownership of your actions. I need you to be respectful. I want you to be yourself. I want you to be honest. Let's stay on topic. Let's not branch out too far. And when you're done talking, I need you to listen when I'm talking. So it's been really helpful just for me and my job. Here's an example from a second grade room. When I met with her, I really wanted to make it fit her room. She has tons of decorations and her style is very clear in there. So we wanted to make the colors, whether they're muted or bright, come through. It was really important to her to be able to do that. And I'm all about that. Let's have some fun. Our fifth grade team is actually departmentalized. So they switch from different subject areas. So that team really wanted the students to understand the expectations and language used is the same in each room. So they made the same one, but each person still used their style or persona, whatever you want to call it, to really match their room. But this matrix right here is actually the exact same in both 5th grade classes, just looks a little different with the background and coloring. So their personality is shining through. And then we give our staff members a chance to change it probably from a couple times a year. We did it again this year to start because they realized maybe this is working better. I want to change this. I really don't like the way this expectation is worded. And then once they're completed, we send it to our print shop downtown. Obviously, we're APS. We are a huge district. We do have a poster making center that will do this for us. Some of you may not. So there's other ways to find ways to print those out. And our classroom issues have really improved tremendously just from using this. Teachers feel like, okay, I can address that because it's an expectation. I can reteach that because it's there. And so actually we took this process just to go one step deeper. And we used it last year during a family learning night because, pardon me, because our families were buying in, they were seeing the success we were having. So I actually had a family matrix making station at one of our family learning nights last year. And families made their own reward systems as they can use Dojo at their house. And just here's an example of what they could do to use our language, our logo, again, same format, but to fit their home. In the morning, meal times, after school, bedtime, in the car, however they wanted to word it, it's there. And it makes sense for their family. And again, one step further, as we like to have our community relationships for community events and our partners, we created these matrices again to show, hey, the eagle's there. If you're there, you're going to do things the eagle way is what we call it. You're going to live by our expectations, be safe, responsible, respectful. And here's how you're going to do that because you're representing us everywhere you go. So I've given Heidi a copy, and I think you guys have access to this too, of this. This is just the basic one. Again, you can personalize it, customize it for your own matrix, however your guys' is laid out at your school. If anyone needs help, Heidi can provide you my email. We can do a meet. I am glad to help people set this up. It's really not that difficult once you get going. Something I didn't show you is at the very top, I actually have a really cool fun fonts little area if you want to customize it. That's how we would do things. It's called cooltext.com. Am I sharing that part now, Heidi? Is it showing the website? We're good. Okay. So if I want to scroll down, I'm like, oh, let's see, what font do I want? We'll do a popsicle font. And I just press that, get rid of the ad. It's a free website. Everything's free. And I'm just going to type in Mr. Lewis's. We're running slow. Expectations. From there, it creates a portable network graphic with PNG. You seriously right click it, copy image, you come back to here and you paste it and it has no background on it. So if I want to add a background to this, I can. Let's move that. Just search, let's do a tie-dye background. And I'll just click one of these. And if I just copy that image, I paste this on here and I'm just going to right click this, go to order, send it back. And now I'm just going to stretch it all the way across. I'll get rid of this because I don't need that anymore. We'll redo all these. And I can stretch this. Obviously, my color is not great. I can go back into this and change color, change the style of the font by going to logo, anything like that. We'll leave it for now. If I want to change these, again, you just hit them. I can make them whatever color you want to. Make the text fit your classroom, your teacher's classroom. Make it their style, their personality. That's what the matrix maker like this is all about, because we want them to feel attached to it and feel like they have ownership and a big part in making it. So that's all I have. If you guys need any help, Heidi has my email, and I will gladly work with you and help you out. And that's it. Thanks so much for your time.
So I'm going to pause and to see if there's any questions. During this time, if you have questions, you can populate the chat or you can just unmute. Nick, I am going to take screen sharing back from you. And we'll populate the rest of the slides there. Thank you. But if there's any questions, now is the time. Take me a minute to kind of get myself back in order here. Amazing work I'm seeing in the chat. Fantastic presentation. Thank you for sharing your story and resources. Anybody have questions regarding, Nick talked a little bit about, because they were on remote, it was kind of an easy way to get ownership from the teachers, but any questions about how they rolled out the classroom stuff other than that? And I'll give a minute for that.
Yeah, Heidi, I mean, you're right. It's exactly what happened. We got lucky with virtual that it really helped us get that. But if you guys can get that buy-in and that everyone using the same kind of idea of reward system, because we still, we always say 80%, but when we had 100, that was our big game changer. So if you can get them using the same thing, it really helps.
Nick, can you just talk a minute about, and I know I didn't I didn't tell you you were going to talk about this, but some of the changes that you've seen in your building as far as like discipline, climate, those kind of things, since you guys have really gotten PBIS in the classroom?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I mean, last year, as you know, Heidi and Nicole works at our district as well and gets to look at our numbers. Our suspension numbers were incredibly low when it was our first full year back in the room since COVID. We were, I don't want to lie. I mean, but it was we were probably almost 80% lower than the year before. It was so much better. And it's because we have our continuum of consequence. We were able to create other things rather than suspension, right? And we were able to reteach those expectations and really have them mean something. Our school store, we revamp all the time to try and keep our kids interested, whether they're in 5th grade or kindergarten. We make it personalized for them. But our numbers, especially for like, our biggest struggle as the district or the state always focuses on is IEP kids. And so we're really focusing on how do we keep them in school and keep them engaged. And our number of IEP kids that were suspended last year, I think we had like maybe one kid last year on an IEP that got suspended. It was incredible.
And I just want to add that those numbers being drastically lower was the exact opposite of every other building in our district. The consistency, like that, over based on coming back from the pandemic, students really struggled. And this system was proven to be effective, and we really appreciate that.
And so the biggest thing, as Heidi always reminds us too, fidelity was the biggest part of it. We didn't rush into things. We really took our time and built this slowly and had fidelity in every piece. So if we didn't have this piece working, we really worked hard in every meeting to how can we get this going? And that's what really helped carry us there. If you guys don't know my building, 5 years ago, we weren't anywhere near this. We've been a focus school up until this current year. Last year, and PBIS is a huge part of it, along with the work of our instructional coach and our staff. But we are finally out of focus. And it's an amazing accomplishment for our building. But because of the classroom behaviors and the expectations, we were able to pull ourselves out of it. And I'm grateful to Heidi and Stephanie and state support teammate and everyone who helped train us, because without them, we probably would not be here for sure.
And you guys have seen academic gains too, right? I saw a little bit of your data.
Massive.
I didn't delve deeply into it, but I know you guys have seen academic gains as well.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. We were a focus school academically, and that changed. I mean, again, drastic change last year. And that was, again, the year after we were virtual for almost an entire year, where almost no one made gains. We made huge gains again in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, which was unheard of, especially for our school.
And it's a rock star team too. I mean, let's just be honest. It is a rock star team, and you guys are awesome. But they worked the framework, and the framework worked for them. And I love the fact that Nick said, we always say in PBIS, it's procedure, not personal. And if you have procedures down, and you guys worked really, really hard on the consistency piece. And that's what I think PBIS in theory is pretty easy to understand. The hardest part is the implementation and getting everybody on the same page, especially when you're working with people that have different personalities, different styles, different management styles. It's really important that you get everybody on the same page, and your building has done really a good job of getting everybody on the same page. Everybody is all the procedures are very tight, and everybody's on the same page. And I think that's made a huge, huge difference.
Thanks.
I'm going to throw it out one more time. Any questions for Nick? He's going to supply me, or has supplied me already. He actually has, with some of these resources that they use to create the matrices. But while he's on, if anybody has a question, I'm going to give it another minute, and then we'll move on to the rest of our network meeting. I'll just give it another minute. I'm not seeing too much in the chat. Well, I would like to thank Nicole. Nicole is the district representation from Akron, as she chimed in. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us. And we do have we'll address that question. And thank you, Nick, for taking time to join us this morning. There was a question that said, "What was the biggest staff pushback?" It's a good question.
I would say the biggest staff pushback was still maybe the acknowledgement system of using Dojo and how they want to use it. Especially at the beginning, and trying to get them to buy in to see how it's working. When we were virtual, again, I hate to start there, but I'll use examples here too in person. When we were virtual, we were having teachers that were having so many issues. And then once they made that transition, they're telling their friends, "Hey, I started doing this, and I started rewarding for camera on, or staying in your seat and raising your hand instead of speaking out." And those things went away. So the biggest staff pushback was, "You're not touching my class. This is my area." And we totally agreed with that. We were always very cautious about that, because it is their class. I understand how that works. I don't want someone coming into my office and telling me what to do. But having them see why it works, how it works, and giving them a kind of a piece of how things work, and selecting the school store, because we let each grade level select what they want for their school store, and giving them some ownership in what's going on was huge. But just the biggest staff pushback was putting it in their class. But once they had that buy-in, once they saw how it worked and saw that we're hands off, it's you. We're not touching it. We're not telling you what to do. You're telling us what you want. We put it there and you run it from there. I'm not micromanaging you after you get there. But just
I think that's huge. And that, we tell people all the time, whenever you do a survey or whenever you put a new procedure in place, you have to get that feedback from the staff. I think that really helps with we don't like to say buy-in, because buy-in's kind of gotten a negative context, but a connotation, but we say ownership, or shared accountability, or shared responsibility. And that really, when you give people a voice, I think that really, really helps. You weren't telling them what they had to put on their matrix necessarily. You just told them it needs to be tied to the building-wide expectations.
That was it. It was whatever they wanted. I just had to sometimes make sure the language was positive. Sometimes we like to start things off with no or do not. And we had to really, work on telling them what to do. But like I said, once you started doing that language in our hallways and from our teachers who struggled with that positive language has changed. I'm like, what? Where am I?
Another question, Nick, how often do students access the school store? We were wondering how often for students to stay engaged in the goal of going to the store.
So they can access it anytime. Our school store is actually virtual still. We started it online. And then we've continued that way. Actually, our first year we were virtual too for our school store, but it was a paper tickets and it was a nightmare. But using Dojo in a virtual school store, the kids have access to it all the time. Our biggest struggle is still our KN1 classes being able to use it, because their reading levels are not quite there to be able to understand what they're picking, and using math to figure out, do I have enough points, do I not? So their teachers have to take time out to do that, but they're willing to do it because they see the success and the ownership that our students are showing, the shared ownership or accountability, and using the school store and how it works in their behaviors. So it happens. I don't know. I probably had 3 or 4 people already buy stuff today, and I get emails as it comes in. I use just a Google form. I'm glad to share those kind of things with anyone. It's a Google form. It comes into a spreadsheet. I'm color code it as it comes in. I take the Dojo points out as I do it, and I just make virtual certificates using Google Slides. Send it to the teachers. They can print them. They can present them how they want. And if it's something that we need to do for the kid, for example, we have kids can shout out a teacher on the announcements, and I send our announcements team an email. They take care of that, and it works. But we try to make it so that kids can have fun. Sometimes it's just a simple raffle, which Heidi has shown you guys on what we do. We go around our school. When we're virtual, we actually went house to house, and they can win and they get this amazing prize bag of stuff. Other times just show and tell, or like shout someone out on the announcements, get your name shouted out on the announcements. For 500 dojo points, you can get a pizza coupon that someone donated to us. And that's again part of us building partnerships. But the school store, the kids love, and we revamp constantly. We talk to the teachers, we give them that accountability piece, that ownership piece, asking them, hey, what's working and what's not working? We'll take it off. We'll add whatever you guys think, because you know them better than I do. You spend all day with them. You hear what they complain about.
Yeah, I think that, again, I think that feedback from the staff is crucial. You guys are a model of that. You have to keep going back, no matter what you do, that team has to keep going back to the staff to see what's working and what's not working. And I think it shows too that you can't, things get stale, and you have to kind of revamp that kind of stuff, you know, once in a while. And you guys make it fun for the kids, the way you present that and how you video it, and you make it real exciting and everybody's excited, and it makes it really cool for the kids. So I think that helps too, because you make it exciting. You make it seem like it's a big deal. So I think that's kind of cool too. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to go on, I think, and move on. If there are questions, I'm sure, I think Nick and Nicole are both going to probably hang on for the rest of the meeting. So if questions come up, we can always address them in the chat, or, you know, you can unmute also. So I think we're going to kind of move on, but thank you guys. If you ever want to see, you know, a really fun school, that's a great elementary school to visit. It's a lot of fun. The climate there is absolutely great. So for the rest of our meeting, we're going to dive a little bit more into these classroom practices. So what Nick and Nicole kind of talked about, to me, would be one of the first things that we talk about when we talk about classroom practices. And that would be, they have their expectations and routines, and they have their expectations and rules, and they have their procedures and routines. And the way that they've done that at Voris is really having every teacher have a classroom matrix, which is what we would suggest. I think it's the easiest way to do that. I've seen schools do it in other ways, but when you have the matrix, and if kids are used to looking at those expectations in school-wide settings or in common areas, I think it's really, really easy to do that, because it's an easy translation to the classroom. So we just wanted to remind you, when we're talking about effective classroom practices in school age, and the early learning is a little different, but very similar, that we're really talking about 8 practices. These are 4 of them. Nick really talked about the first 2, the expectations and the procedures, but he also talked a little bit about the encouraging expected behavior, and that's their dojo is really serving that function. They're really reinforcing those behaviors by giving dojo points. The other ones would be, how are you discouraging unexpected behavior in your classroom? In other words, what kind of a continuum of response do you have when students do not follow the expectation? We talked about these last time at our meeting too. And then the last 4 are, do students have an opportunity to respond? Is there more student talk time versus teacher talk time? Are we actively supervising as kids are in our class? Are we moving, scanning, and interacting with students? How do we sequence our activities so that students stay engaged? And do we provide choice? And then the last one is, how do we let students show what they know? If they don't prefer writing, sometimes are there other ways? If they don't prefer reading, sometimes are there other ways to show what they know, or do other ways to do their work? So those are really the 8 practices. And you guys have identified that this was an area in our network that you wanted to do a deeper dive into. So we're kind of going to do it. We're going to do a deeper dive. So starting today, we did have our presentation. And then we're going to kind of go into breakout rooms in a second to explore some of the tools that you guys can use. But I'm going to throw it to Michelle, and she's going to talk about our 8 classroom practices school age align with the early childhood version, and they're really very similar. So, but they're more developmentally appropriate. Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. So you'll see here on the screen, if you were with us for our first meeting, we talked a little bit about 5 practices that should be happening in early childhood classrooms. Especially preschool, but I would argue all the way up through grade 3. A lot of these practices are really important to consider. Nick, you talked about how K1, there's a lot of non-readers and a lot of support is needed there. And so a lot of these practices can support kids even up through grade 3. You'll see here, I highlighted 3 of those that align with expectations and procedures and routines. which is what Frank's going to go into in just a little bit. But these align directly with school age. If I would give you three things to remember specific to early childhood that really sets it apart, it's make sure you have pictures and visuals to represent your schedules, your routines, and your expectations. Make sure that you have gestures to also represent what you want young children to do. And then really think about song and music and how you are putting those expectations and routines to music, because young children remember that along the way. So those are the important pieces. There's also a link on this slide that will take you into a folder. You will find that infographic that you see on the slide that looks at those 5 classroom practices. I know we've had many elementaries, preschools that have used this across all of their staff to talk about each of these 5 pieces and whether or not they have it in place in their classrooms. There's also, Heidi, if you can click on the next resource, there's also a really quick self-assessment for these 5 classroom practices that individual staff members can look at or leadership teams can look at across classrooms to think about whether or not these practices are happening. And then the last resource is a really nice 2-pager that goes into the 5 practices and gives staff members some concrete ways that they could incorporate more of this into what they're doing with young children every day. So those 3 resources are in that folder for you. And we'll come back to it as we head through the network further this year and think about things specific to early childhood.
Thanks, Michelle. So
Yeah.
again, a lot of this stuff, and I would argue this stuff is good through grade 12. I don't care. It's still good through grade 12. You know, they sometimes we separate out the early learning, but I always say those practices are great for older kids too.